What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stucky.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast from the Action Network and Fantasy Labs. I'm your host, Chris Raybon, and today we're going to discuss those all-important fantasy football sweepers for 2024. To help me break it down, as always, I'm joined by one of the most accurate rankers in the business, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, what's going on?
What's up? Wrapped up another great preseason, going 20-13. So that was like my third or fourth straight year betting on preseason heavily and finishing over 60%. Already feel like I'm in mid-season form with 33 official plays under the belt here.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's all I gotta say. I'm actually like any quick. What was your number one takeaway from preseason? Because I know you ended up watching pretty much all those games because you're sweating.
Yeah. Well, my takeaways were Tyson Bagent seems like a legit backup. Mac Jones and Zach Wilson were solid, and maybe Trey Lance needs some more work. Although that was a very exciting game, but the 5 interceptions were absolutely brutal. But I had fun watching him. He played pretty much every snap for the Cowboys and just imploded in the last game. But it's always fun to get to see these guys get another shot. And it just looks like, it's not happening for Lance now. Who knows if it will happen at some point. I know you took his under half career starts, the rest of his career. Yeah. That'll be an interesting one to see play out now.
Yeah, I mean that definitely helped his case because he could not stop throwing the ball to the other team. It was absurd. But we're gonna get into our top fantasy football sweepers at each position momentarily. Before we do, just want to quickly remind everyone that our 2024 fantasy football draft kit is available right now over at FantasyLabs.com. You can find all of me and Sean's player rankings, player projections, content, sweepers, all that good stuff, draft kit tool at FantasyLabs.com. And remember, Sean and I are both top 5 most accurate rankers over the past 3 seasons in the Fantasy Pros Accuracy Contest for season long. So be sure to get all of our rankings and projections and content over at FantasyLabs.com. And you could get $20 off by using the promo code FLEX20 when you sign up at FantasyLabs.com/flex. That's FLEX20 when you sign up at FantasyLabs.com/flex. All right. So we've seen what we needed to in the preseason. You've made 33 bets. I've watched every snap. I have much fewer bets, but I think we're both ready to go here with our sweepers. And, just quickly, how do you define a sweeper? Because it's different for everybody. So I just want to kind of lay some groundwork so people kind of understand where we're coming from here when we talk about sweepers.
I would say it's just players that I think are more likely to outperform their ADP than people realize. And it's not always like my rank is way higher than them. When I get to some running backs, I actually have my full season rank exactly the same as ADP. But I talk about how there's better path for upside than some of these backup running backs, so to speak. So I just think it's thinking about projections and the range of outcomes. And saying that these players' ceiling is probably higher than the ADP is getting credit for, and more likely to, help you win your fantasy football championship, which is what we're going for. So I just think all of these players I talked about today, I'm willing to target at ADP or a little bit earlier to make sure I get these guys.
Yeah, great breakdown. And for me, everyone defines it different. For me, I try to focus first and foremost when I think about a sleeper, guys who I can get outside of the startable range of ADP. So guys not being drafted as starters that can give me startable value, whether that's, consistency, whether that's just, upside, like you mentioned. But that's kind of my number one definition of sleeper. So, and then deep sleepers are guys who, might be a little later on in the draft, maybe like a QB2 who I expect to finish a lot better than ADP. Those are deep sleepers. So I'll note kind of the difference between them as we go along. And we'll also have a busts episode. We'll have a league winners episode as well. So be sure to check those out. But let's start at quarterback. Last season, we did not do well in our quarterback sleepers. We did very well on some of our other positions, but we did whiff at quarterback. Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, and Aiden O'Connell were your picks, and I added Daniel Jones. So, I mean, Richardson would have been good if he stayed healthy, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and call that a 0 for 4. So let's do better this season. Start us off. Who you got?
Well, to be fair, Aiden O'Connell did take over the starting job, but I take your point. I have a few quarterbacks I'm going to talk about today, and the first one, I feel like I've talked about him 100 times at this point, so I'll make it quick. It's Caleb Williams at QB 13. I was high on him, entering preseason, but just given his talent, the landing spot, his weapons, but he looked even better in preseason than I thought he would be, so I think he's ahead of the curve already. And I think you actually summed up sleepers very well. It's these guys outside of the startable range, and he's QB 13. So in traditional leagues where you're starting one quarterback, he's going to be the first quarterback drafted outside of the top 12. And I always find that to be like the sweet spot for taking these high upside quarterbacks. Sometimes they're rookies like Caleb Williams, where if he doesn't pan out, which I don't think that's going to be the case, he won't kill you. You could probably find someone else on the waiver wire to be a long-term solution or stream the position. But I just love where he's going when it comes to my overall draft strategy. And I think he has top 10, potentially even top 5 upside as soon as this season. So love Caleb Williams at QB 13. Going a little bit further down, I think Trevor Lawrence is also appealing at QB 16. Another guy that you could just take a flyer on later in drafts. He was QB 13 last year, what I would consider was a down year with everybody else. So everybody's kind of down on him a little bit. I think, he played through a few injuries last year. He kind of played through them, so that's a credit to him, but maybe that did rob him of some of the efficiency we saw a brief glimpse of in 2022. And I think people remembered that stretch in 2022. It looked like he was ready to become a top 5 quarterback in the league. He was around QB 7 in points per game for most of that season. That's why he was QB 8 entering last year. So I think just the fact that he had a disappointing season, I wouldn't, back off him yet. So I think that this could be finally the breakout season we get from Lawrence in year 4. He's just 24 years of age. He has rushing upside. It's not like he's some just pocket passer. And I love, the talent around him. So I think he's definitely worth a flyer in that mid QB2 range at QB 16. And last but not least, Sam Darnold at QB 28. This obviously isn't a sexy pick. This is not a guy you should be targeting in 12-team leagues that start one quarterback. But this is a guy I think specifically in 2 quarterback super flex formats. He's a pretty good pick in this range. And, he was a guy that I was projecting to get, taken over by JJ McCarthy after a few games. But with JJ McCarthy out for the season, he could be the starting quarterback for the Vikings for all 17 games. And, there's a lot of upside in this offense. Kirk Cousins was QB 7 in points per game last year. And I don't think Sam Darnold's anywhere near as good as Kirk Cousins, but he might not be that far off. So this is actually the best situation he's ever been in. He's a former first-round pick, just 27 years old. So I think this could be a similar situation, be like Geno Smith in 2022. Just emerged from, becoming a backup quarterback for a few seasons. Finally got a good, starting gig on a team with a bunch of weapons. We could see something like that with Sam Darnold. And he does have some sneaky rushing upside. So I think at QB 28, you could certainly do worse, especially with a guy that could start 15 plus games. So I think he's a sleeper in the traditional sense, just based on where he's going at ADP right now.
Yeah. this guy, Trevor Lawrence, I really like that pick because, first of all, I have him ranked quarterback 12. So, and he was one of those guys where you just kind of do your projections and then you look at them when they're done and you kind of look at like, oh, what's surprising. And Trevor Lawrence jumped out at me because I was like, I didn't think I would have him as a top 12 quarterback, especially without, fiddling with anything, just raw projection heading into the year. But we've talked about this. He got really unlucky. He's been really unlucky with drops pretty much throughout his entire career. I don't think Ridley was a great fit based on how they used him. Zay Jones was hurt last year. So now you have Davis, you have Kirk, you have Brian Thomas, the rookie. So I think your receiving core is set. And Washington even is flashing and might contribute more than expected as well. So, and of course, Evan Ingram, he made that great catch in the preseason. Yep. I know you saw that. So I really like Trevor Lawrence as well. I think he is a guy that is going too low and even a potential league winner. Based on the talent level, the fact that, as you mentioned, he does have some rushing upside and he can he can make all the throws and he has everything in place to put up a massive fantasy season. So really love that call. Love the Williams call as well. He's on my board. I just think the supporting cast is too good for him to fail. And, he'll be playing in some shootouts against the Lions and Packers, I think, a couple times a year. And I really like the schedule, how it kind of sets up in year one for Williams. But Jaden Daniels, fellow rookie, is the guy that's number one on my list at QB 12. And that's because we talk about this all the time. If you're not going to draft a Lamar Jackson or a Jalen Hurts or a Josh Allen, who are all likely, barring injury, to finish top 5, then you're going to have to compete with that. And the best way to do it at a discount is to find rushing upside. And Jaden Daniels is in that sweet spot that you mentioned of, he's cheap enough to where it doesn't kill you if you whiff on him, but he has enough rushing upside to put up, Anthony Richardson numbers, who's going at quarterback 6, or, even top 5 numbers in any given week. And that's because rushing yards, rushing touchdowns are 1.5x. It's just math. So Jaden Daniels, I expect him to scramble a ton. I expect him to be used on a lot of designed runs as well. And will the passing numbers be great? Probably not. Will he take a lot of sacks? Probably. But, we've seen Justin Fields put up massive numbers. And I think Daniels can play, better than Fields, and at least hit the ground running a little better than Fields. Remember, Fields was just abysmal in his first few starts before he really got going. I think Daniels can start a little faster. So I really like Daniels at QB 12. And of course, Cliff Kingsbury, remember in 2019, his first year with the Cardinals, they drafted Kyler Murray. He won Rookie of the Year. So I think Jaden Daniels can put up pretty good numbers in this offense as well. And some other guys I'll mention, kind of under the radar guys that I have ranked higher. If you're in 2QB or super flex, I think you might want to pay attention to Geno Smith, post-hype buyback. So last year, Canales leaves. He has a little bit of regression, especially struggles in the red zone and on third down. But I like the uncertainty and the combination of the uncertainty and the discount here, right? Because you got Ryan Grubb coming in, and I actually think he'll do some good things for this offense. And you got all the talent. I mean, you got Jackson Smith and Jigba entering year 2. Lockett and Metcalf are one of the best tandems in the league. Noah Fant is a pretty talented receiving tight end, even though he really hasn't gotten to show it because he's been in a 3-way committee. You got Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet in the backfield if you want to throw to them. So the offensive line's not going to be great, but Geno is kind of like a discount Caleb Williams in that he can run just enough. And remember, Geno Smith put up a top 5 season just a couple years ago. I think we were actually both high on him entering last year. Probably didn't weigh that Canales departure more strongly enough. But now he's down to QB 24. I actually have him inside my top 20. And Seattle also is due for some regression in not just their third down conversion rate and their red zone rate, but also their just plays. every year they've been averaging like 57, 58 plays per game because of their struggles on third downs. So if they just improve that a little bit, you're going to see more volume for Geno Smith as well. New offense, talented receiving core, so really like him. And then speaking of Canales, Bryce Young at QB 29. I think Bryce Young's going to be a lot better. Remember, Canales transformed Geno Smith and had a career year, put up a top 10 fantasy season. And then Baker Mayfield exceeded expectations last year. Young has all the talent. They added Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette, an early round pick at wide receiver with some explosiveness. He's back in action as well. And Jatavian Sanders at tight end. You added to the offensive line on the interior with $100 million to Robert Hunt. So that really helps a guy like Young who is on the short side. You don't want that interior pressure. So I think it's going to be night and day. And of course, you got that last place 2-15 NFC South schedule to boot. So a lot of winnable games, a lot of pick-apartable defenses for Bryce Young. And he can move a little bit too. He can scramble a little bit too if he has to. So like him as well. So Daniels, Williams, Geno Smith, Bryce Young are my guys.
Yeah, maybe I was a year or two early on Bryce Young. I'll admit that. But I love the idea of us both kind of like targeting Caleb and Jaden Daniels, just waiting at quarterback because I think they'll pan out. But if they don't you think this is going to be one of the best QB waiver wire seasons of all time? Because guys like Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, Tua, Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, any one of those guys could be available at any time unless everybody rosters 2 quarterbacks. So like the situation, like the week-to-week waiver wire streamer discussion at quarterback seems like it'll be better this year than I can recall.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just a lot of flexibility, I think, at the position. And, obviously the goal is to get a top 5 season, to get to put up Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen type point totals, but you want it at a discount. And I think there are like the back half of the QB1 tier has a lot of potential league winners. And then you get to the late round quarterbacks like Daniels and Williams. And those guys, if not league winners, are definitely guys that can fit, handsomely inside the QB1 tier, and produce a lot of startable weeks and streamable weeks. So just a lot of flexibility. Especially in redraft, I find myself waiting at quarterback more often than not. Best ball is where I'll kind of mix it up because you want exposure to, some Josh Allen and some Hurts and guys like that. But in redraft leagues, I think you're much better off from a ceiling floor perspective in terms of your final roster and your starting lineup each week by waiting at the position. Let's go to running back. So in 2023, you had David Montgomery on this show, Jaylen Warren, and Zach Charbonnet. So that's a pretty good trio right there. I was hit or miss. I had Alexander Madison, Tajay Spears, Tank Bigsby, Tyra Algier. So, hit or miss. Tajay was good. Algier outperformed expectations as well, but Bigsby never got going. Maybe a post-hype guy this year. Yeah. And Madison, he was okay, but it was just so frustrating because he could have been so much better. I mean, how many times did he fumble? How many times did he get stuffed at the goal line? Just so many mistakes. But I mean, he still produced enough startable weeks to get you by. But that was frustrating. But who you got this year?
Yeah. So the 3 backs last year were all earned an A or A+ grade in my running back upside chart last year. Charbonnet was a bit disappointing just because when Kenneth Walker was healthy, he didn't really factor in as much as I thought he could. But I'm going with 3 more guys that I'm giving an A or A+ grade to in my running back upside chart this year. And once again, Dave Montgomery gets an A+ grade from me. And the reason for that is he's going at RB20. Which is right around where I have him ranked. Even, if Jahmyr Gibbs stays healthy for all 17 games this year. But if and when Gibbs ever misses time, he's going to be a top 5 back, probably on both of our weekly projections. That's just how much upside he has if Gibbs misses time. And I think people kind of knock Montgomery because, he technically is kind of the second option or the second most valuable back in this backfield, but that's kind of already factored in. And I just think people overlook too much like his injury upside. And we saw that last year when Gibbs was out a few games. He went off. Whereas, to put this in perspective, Joe Mixon's going 5 slots higher than Montgomery at RB 15 range. But if you think about him, like whether Dameon Pierce or Cam Akers are healthy or not, it really doesn't matter. He's always going to be in that RB 12 to RB 15 range. So that's kind of why I think about these running backs in terms of like best and worst case scenario. So that's why Dave Montgomery is still a smash play for me at RB 20, just given his top 5 upside. And then the next guy on the list, Blake Corum at RB 42, another A+ grade for me. When it comes to running backs outside of the top 40, if I think that they have RB1 upside, if the starting running back were to miss time, that's an automatic A grade. But the reason I gave him an A+ is just because, Sean McVay, this time last year, we all thought Cam Akers was going to be lead back. And after week 1, that was history. Then it was Kyren Williams. So we've seen sort of musical chairs before. And Blake Corum, Kyren Williams was great last year, but he's a 6th-round talent. Blake Corum's a 3rd-round talent, an excellent prospect out of Michigan. So it's not, without the realm of possibilities that he does take over Kyren this year. So that's why I think just that's an added bonus. Plus, Sean McVay's hinted that they need to be smart about Kyren Williams. So that could mean, they're planning on limiting his workload, or maybe this is going to be more of a 50-50 timeshare than we think. But either way, Blake Corum is going outside of the top 40, which means, he's an automatic play for me based on my RB upside chart. And last but not least, Bucky Irving is another running back I have an A grade for because he's being drafted in the RB 55 to 60 range, which puts him in a different bucket. I don't think you need to have RB1 upside if the starting running back were to miss time. But I think he would absolutely offer RB2 value if Rachaad White were to miss time. And I think there is a chance that he could carve out a big enough role to see RB3 flex value in like very high bye weeks, even if Rachaad White's healthy. Because Rachaad White, he's been very inefficient the first 2 seasons. Yes, the O-line has been a big reason why, but he had the 5th lowest yards over expected attempt according to Next Gen Stats last year, which actually factors in blocking and where defenders are and things like that. So I think that, the Bucs took Bucky Irving in the 4th round because they want to give White some more competition and potentially have more of a split committee. So, Bucky Irving's a guy based on where he's going that gets another A grade for me. And I think is a excellent stash, probably in deeper leagues because he's going outside the top 55.
Yeah, I like Bucky as well. I thought he looked really good in the preseason, and I do expect him to kind of cut into White's workload at some point. They looked like they wanted to reduce White's workload down the stretch last year, and they're doing it with Chase Edmonds, who's on IR, by the way. So that's all. Bucky Irving's the number 2 back for the entire season, barring injury, because Edmonds was placed on IR, not designated to return. So his season's over before it even gets started. So that's really good news for Irving as well. Corum, I'll just go ahead and say he was on my list as well. So really, really like that call there. I've been talking about him all offseason. I think he hit the nail on the head. Sean McVay always telegraphs his intentions, and the fact that Corum was resting despite never playing as a rookie is just beautiful. And that Rams offense, top 5 in running back carries last year. And Corum probably start out as more of a, early down change of pace for Kyren, but that could lead to goal line work. It's not like this Ram team throws a ton to the backs anyway. Mm-hmm. So you're looking for carry volume, indoor, high scoring, efficient offense. And I think you get that with the Rams. So good environment. And like you said, if something happens to Kyren, who has never played more than 12 games and had his highest touch count since high school. I don't even have his high school stats, but he didn't have any. He didn't have as many touches as he had last year in college at any point. So, there's a lot of potential for some durability issues with Kyren Williams. So love me some Blake Corum as well. A few other guys I'll mention. Devin Singletary, I really like him, although his ADP is starting to creep up, but RB28, I still think you're going to get RB2 value at an RB3 price from Devin Singletary, because you have 2 day 3 picks behind him in the backfield. Tyrone Tracy Jr., who they drafted this year, has missed time in camp with an injury. And then Eric Gray's looked pretty good in preseason, but they paid Devin Singletary top 15 running back money in terms of both value of the contract and guarantees after saying, hey, we don't want to pay Saquon Barkley. So I think they're going to use Singletary a ton. And remember, Joe Shane, Brian Dable, they come from Buffalo. Guess who drafted Singletary? Buffalo. So they have a lot of familiarity with this guy, and I think he's no Saquon Barkley, but he may very well be used in a similar fashion to Saquon Barkley. And I think this year defenses are going to sit on the pass a lot more because I think the Giants, you have Neighbors. They're talking about going deep more. You have Hyatt, who's another field stretcher, and Slayton, 2 field stretchers. I think, and then Wandale underneath, can get separation. So I think defenses are going to prioritize sitting on the pass. And if Singletary wants to go, 4 yards in a cloud of dust, 15, 20 times a game, I think defenses will be fine with that. So I expect Singletary to beat his ADP. Ezekiel Elliott, I think, the Cowboys still haven't addressed the backfield. We'll see if they do now with final cuts underway. I know they hosted Dalvin Cook, but he's cooked for real. I don't think Elliott is quite as cooked as maybe people think. Yes, he had a low yard per carry the last couple of years, but what you're really looking for at RB37 is enough volume to be passable, week to week, which I think he's going to get because it looks like he's going to start the season as the lead back over Rico Dowdle. Elliott was kept in bubble wrap all preseason. I'm pretty bullish on Elliott, and I was checking sports books, and they're even more bullish. Like they have him for like over 30 catches, and I think pretty much honing in on 1,000 scrimmage yards, which is kind of surprising. So I'm not sleeping on Zeke. He's not ancient yet. I think he's 29 or he's 29 this year. So he's older, but not completely ancient. And the interior of the Cowboy line is still the strength of the team. The tackle situation might be a little dicey, but Zeke, 10 touchdowns a couple years ago in Dallas, and then 12 in 2022, despite averaging 3.8 yards per carry. I think he can get to double digits. I think he can actually give you a consistent 50-ish, 50, 60 scrimmage yards, few catches, and a touchdown most weeks, and playing ahead of Dowdle in what was the league's highest scoring offense last year. So I think Zeke is a bargain with some upside, even though it's not sexy. And finally, one other guy I really like is Chuba Hubbard at RB45. I just think he's going too low. I mean, do you treat him as a backup to Brooks, on your running back upside? Who is he, the starter or the backup?
That is a great question. I actually have Brooks as the starter, but he's not playing the first 4 games. So this is basically Hubbard is already cashing in on the injury upside that he has. So yeah, I think he's the kind of back that has early season value. Maybe, Brooks doesn't leapfrog at any point this season, but he's a guy that, people that do a 0 RB approach, you're going to need guys to actually start early in the season. So that makes Hubbard a fantastic target for someone that, needs instant production.
Yeah, I really like Hubbard because I think at RB45, he's cheap enough where even if you only get a month of production, it's kind of worth it at RB45. I mean, this was a guy who is averaging 14 carries and what was it? About 2.5 catches. So about 16 and a half touches per game last year, played his way into a featured role over Miles Sanders and ended up with 238 carries on the season. So big workload. Has only missed 2 games in his entire career in 3 years. He's still only 25. He can catch it. He can run it. The offensive line's going to be better. And like you said, Brooks, I think there's this anchoring bias where every time I read a blurb on a fantasy driven site about Brooks, it's he'll miss the first 4 games. But if you just read a normal Carolina beat, it's he'll miss at least the first 4 games.
Oh, right.
And right. Because it's everyone, I think this is a classic, and we'll talk about this more in the busts pod, but it's a classic situation where people overvalue these guys that are injured and slated to miss games coming into the season, and you assume that they're just gonna, okay, he'll miss 4 games and you'll get like 12 games of RB2 value. No,
Right.
like he's a rookie who just missed all of camp and he was injured in like November. So number one, he might not miss just 4 games. Number two, that's just his practice window. They have every incentive to take it slow with a guy they spent premium draft capital on. They're not going anywhere fast. It's not like they're trying to compete for a Super Bowl or anything like that. And he's a rookie. He missed a ton of camp. So, you can't get Bryce Young plastered because he's tiny. If he gets hurt, that's your franchise quarterback. So you have to be able to trust him in protection, all those things. So there is a decent chance that Brooks doesn't actually leapfrog Hubbard at any point. I'm not saying that it's necessarily like a given, but it's definitely squarely within the range of outcomes, and it's probably 50-50 at worst. So I really like Hubbard here in the RB 45 range. I think you might be able to get, RB2 value to start the year and, RB2 flexish value for much of the year. And that's a really good value at RB 45. All right, we'll hit wide receiver in a second, but before we move on, just want to remind everyone again, all of our fantasy football content is over at FantasyLabs.com. Remember, we are both top 5 most accurate season-long fantasy rankers over the past 3 years at Fantasy Pros, and our rankings and projections can be found at FantasyLabs.com, as well as Kerner's tiers and more. You can get $20 off using the promo code FLEX20. That's FLEX20 at FantasyLabs.com/flex. So be sure to hit up FantasyLabs.com/flex. Use that promo code FLEX20. Get your discount, get the projections, get the rankings, crush your fantasy league, FantasyLabs.com. All right. One more thing. This is exciting. I always love this. The Favorites podcast, our friends over at the Favorites, they're running a $100,000 pro football pick'em contest. It's officially back. And if you're new here last season, our friends over at the Favorites, they ran a totally free NFL pick'em contest. You pick 5 against the spread each week, and we awarded over $100K in cash prizes to our listeners, including a first place prize of $40,000. And we're running it back this season, baby. Same website, sign up at favorites.actionnetwork.com. Same structure. It's totally free to play. 5 picks each week, Monday Night Football tiebreaker. And it's got the same season-long prizes. Top 10 finishers get paid. First place gets $40,000. There's thousands in cash up for grabs each and every week. Is there a catch? Nope. You got nothing to lose, so sign up at favorites.actionnetwork.com. All right, wide receiver. I really liked your one of your first wide receiver sleeper last year. That was Jaden Reed. Great call there. He was a top 25, finished as a top 25 receiver. So it was hit or miss besides that. Van Jefferson and Zay Jones, kind of Zay Jones got hurt and Jefferson. He's just
Van Jefferson turned into Demarcus Robinson. It was whoever the hell.
Don't insult Demarcus Robinson like that.
Oh, no, I know. Yeah, no, Van Jefferson. Yeah, thank God.
Yeah.
I mean, he was probably wide receiver 80 when I said that, but
I know it happens. Like I had a guy too who just ran 2 guys I picked ran wind sprints all year, Jalen Hyatt and Michael Gallup, but also had Rashee Rice and Tank Dell. Yeah. So that worked out decently well, but these are going to be hit or miss. That's the whole point. You're trying to draft. The later you get in your draft, the more risk you can take. You don't need to hit on every pick, especially late. But if you hit on a Rashee Rice or a Jaden Reed or a Tank Dell, even for half the year, you're in business. So with that being said, who do you like at sleeper wide receiver in 2024?
Well, I'm going to stick with the Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, Tank Dell trend. I'm going to talk about couple of rookies and a guy that he was rookie last year but didn't play much. And the first guy up is Rome Odunze at wide receiver 39. I think this wide receiver 40 to 50 range is like the sweet spot to get these high upside guys, because you should probably have 3, maybe even 4 receivers by now. So you're just, loading up your bench. But Odunze at wide receiver 39, I think is a great place to take him. He was the 3rd wide receiver drafted this year and one of the best wide receiver classes we've ever seen. There's very little holes to poke in his game. I think he's a complete receiver. Will very likely be a stud over the next decade. However, similar to CeeDee Lamb and Jackson Smith-Njigba, he landed on a team where he's probably going to open as the number 3 receiver on his team as a rookie, which could, limit his potential ceiling a bit, which is certainly why his ADP is where it is. But he will offer wide receiver 2 upside if either DJ Moore or Keenan Allen, ever miss time. So he has that going for him. Even if both stay healthy, I think he could hit as a rookie, just given how good, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen have been in their careers. They've never really been high-end touchdown guys. Neither one of them has topped 10 or more receiving touchdowns in a season. And that's Odunze really profiles as, a complete receiver, but especially in the red zone. So he could end up leading this team in receiving touchdowns. I would not be shocked by that. So that's sort of his path to get there, even despite, the crowded receiver room. But either way, I just love his upside at this ADP. It's also a bet that Caleb Williams will also exceed expectations this year. So I just love where Odunze is going in the draft. So love getting him here right around wide receiver 40. And then next up, another rookie I just absolutely love, and that's Brian Thomas Jr. He's going anywhere between wide receiver 45 and 50, which again is just the ideal slot to take a guy who has this much upside. I've been very high on him since the draft. I love this landing spot. He's a bigger wide receiver who could win downfield and in the red zone. And I keep saying it, he gives me Randy Moss vibes. Not saying he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer, just certain aspects of his game. He's willing to go up there, make contested catches, can get open. I think he has a ton of upside in year 1. And this is also a way to invest in a potential year 4 breakout for Trevor Lawrence. And, Calvin Ridley led the league with 24 end zone targets last year. So those are going to have to go somewhere. I think, Brian Thomas Jr. could take a lot of those. He's going to be competing with Gabe Davis, downfield and near the red zone. But I think Thomas Jr. is a more complete receiver. So I'm willing to bet on him as a rookie. And again, if he's your first receiver on your bench, I think you've done a great job. It might be hard to keep him on your bench, just a few weeks into the season, but I think he's going to have a breakout year as a rookie. And last but not least, this is a very deep, deep sleeper, but Andre Yosevach at wide receiver 84. He's not the type of guy people in traditional leagues need to be drafting, but you definitely need to keep him on your radar. With, Tyler Boyd now in Tennessee, there is a wide open spot for the number 3 wide receiver for the Bengals, which means they're very likely going to be Joe Burrow's number 3 target. And as of now, it looks like Yosevach has won that role. I kind of predicted that if and when Higgins or Boyd moved on. I think he still could be in a competition in season with 3rd round pick Jermaine Burton, who I love, but there's been some concerns about his just, preparation, the way he handles the game. So I've seen him down to 6 on the depth charts. I think the coaching staff, he's kind of in the doghouse right now. So Yosevach looks like he's entering the season as the number 3 receiver. I think he's going to thrive in that role. And it would only take a Jamar Chase or T. Higgins injury for him to have wide receiver 3 plus upside. So he's a guy where in season, he might have a game where he catches a couple touchdowns and Chase or Higgins are going to miss time. And people are going to ask, like, should I put money on this guy? And I'm going to be like, yes, you absolutely should add this guy. I think he does have top 30 upside in the right situation. So he's just a guy that, again, you're not drafting in normal leagues, but you have to have him on your radar in season.
Yeah, I think when we were preparing for the pod, you were gonna go with Burton, and then I saw you change it to Yosevach, and I highlighted it and outlined. I was like, yes, that is the right guy, because I know you've been following the Bengal beat just as I do. Full disclosure, since I started doing this, I rarely read other people's fantasy content, outside of maybe you and a few other people. And there's a lot of great content out there, but I find it a lot more helpful to just read in the weeds, beat stuff, local reports. And yeah, they just said the trust just isn't there with Burton and Burrows. So he's caught 2 long touchdowns, but Josevich, they love him. He's obviously a year ahead now of Burton, and that's kind of, I think Burton might be a year away, or maybe it's a second half of the year breakout, but Josevich is going to get every chance to start, and that could mean playing 80-85% of the snaps with Joe Burrow, and like you said, being his number 3 target. So really like that call. It's a deep sleeper, but that's, if you're targeting a deep sleeper, you want it from a quarterback that can throw for 45, 55K yards and 40 plus touchdowns, and Burrow can certainly do that. All right, I got a few guys who, and again, I try to prioritize guys here who you can get outside of the startable range that should be able to give you startable value and consistent value. And the reason being because they have a good chance to be their team's either number 1 receiver or top 2 target on their team, which I think is really all you can ask for when you're drafting guys, outside that top 30, 35. And so the first guy, Deontay Johnson, I really like him at wide receiver 38. Already talked about how I expect Bryce Young to be a lot better in year 2 with Canales coming over, the quarterback whisperer, with Deontay Johnson going back to playing the X receiver position where he's had most of his success throughout his career. Last year, he was playing the Z with Pickens at the X, and it just didn't really go too well. And then it ended up with him getting traded to Carolina. So Johnson said the first thing Canales told him when he got there was, you're going to be my featured X receiver. That means he's rarely going to come off the field. This is a guy who gets a ton of separation. He can be targeted at, at 25%, 25% per route. So really like Deontay Johnson here in what should be a more efficient Carolina passing attack with targets up for grabs here in year 2 of Bryce Young. DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver 42. I'll buy the dip on that all day. Hopkins was a guy who was targeted on over 25% of his routes last season, which is excellent. Ridley was closer to 20%. So Hopkins, if both guys are healthy, Hopkins still would project as the number 1 receiver in Tennessee. And it looks like he even has a chance to get back for week 1. But, I usually don't like to target guys who are hurt heading into the year. But DeAndre Hopkins has, top 15, wide receiver 1 upside. He's one of the most talented wide receivers in the league. And remember, this Tennessee offense is going to be completely different under Brian Callahan who's coming over from Cincinnati, where he was the offensive coordinator. It's going to be a lot more 1-1 personnel and a lot more pass heavy, similar to the offenses that Joe Burrow and Jake Browning even last year had success in. So I think Hopkins is a really sneaky pick, and people are just discounting him way too much. A rare time where I'm buying on a guy that's banged up heading into the year, but even with projecting some injury issues for Hopkins, I still have him, in the mid 30s at wide receiver. So I think he has upside even greater than that. Because remember, him and Levis connected on I think they had like a 3-4 touchdown game at one point. So there's chemistry there. Yeah, 4 touchdown games. So there's chemistry there. The volume's going to be there, and he still projects that as a target hog in this offense, and what should be. It's not going to be the Derrick Henry, heavy personnel slam, Henry and Spears kind of running the show. This is going to be I think a much pass happier offense. So love Hopkins. Cortland Sutton, another guy who not too sexy, but a wide receiver 46. When I project that out, that's essentially his floor. I mean, I don't expect him to repeat the 10 touchdowns from last year, but the 2 seasons before that, he only had a couple of touchdowns each time, and he was still in that high to mid 40 range. So I think he's being taken at his floor. He's still not too old. He's a year removed from that ACL he suffered a few years ago. Another year removed from that ACL he suffered a few years ago. I don't think that going from Cook, Russell Wilson to Bo Nix is a massive downgrade. I still think Sutton is going to be the unquestioned target leader of this team. Looks like they're trying to move Tim Patrick. So, you're going to be competing with like Mims and rookies and Dulcich and running backs. Like I think Sutton is being undervalued here. He could be consistent, at least a wide receiver 3, but upside for more. Keon Coleman at wide receiver 48. He's my favorite Bill of the 3 of Shakir and Samuel. They all go around the same spot. I like Coleman, the rookie, because I think he's the guy with the most touchdown upside. And with Josh Allen, you don't need a ton of separation. You just need size, and he'll force the ball to you. And I think that could happen with Coleman. So, Shakir, great player, better bet in probably full PPR. But I like Coleman in all formats because I think he has the most upside of these 3 wide receivers. Still, I think only 21 years old. So very young, very raw, but they drafted him early for a reason. And finally, love Ladd McConkey, but he's up to wide receiver 43. So I'll take Josh Palmer at wide receiver 55 because it looks like McConkey's going to come off the field in, 1-2 personnel. Because he's going to be more of the slot receiver to start. He can play inside, outside, but Palmer can play all the spots, and he was treated like the number 1 all preseason. Still got Justin Herbert at quarterback. I know it's going to be a run heavier offense, but I'll take Justin Herbert's potential top target all day at wide receiver 55. So DeAndre Hopkins, Cortland Sutton, Keon Coleman, and Josh Palmer.
Yeah, I'm definitely warming up to Keon Coleman because, the Bills are going to run a lot of heavy 2 tight end personnel. And when it comes to the Bills, I always try to think who's going to be on the field in those sets. And I think Coleman's a lock, right? And then it's kind of it's up in the air, whether it's Shakir or Samuel, or maybe they put like a Mac Hollins out there in those situations. But it does seem like Keon Coleman would be the most likely one to be out there all the time, which is why I've been moving him up. Because he does profile as that. He could really play at all level, but that's one of the selling points for me on the Bills receivers, because I think we do have to take shots on these guys. I think one of them, or maybe 2 of them, will pop, and I think right now most likely one's the rookie.
Yeah, I mean, I just he has the most upside, and he has the most touchdown upside, and at the end of the day, that's kind of what you're looking for. I mean, Shakir is great. He could be a guy that catches like four balls a game, but that's like his ceiling and floor I don't think are as far apart. Whereas Coleman, he played every snap in the preseason with the first team, and he has that 10 touchdown upside and that upside to just be like a legit number 1 X receiver. It's not necessarily maybe like 70% likely, but it's definitely like a 40-50% shot. And I think at wide receiver 48, it's worth it. So yeah, I've been warming up to him as well. He's definitely the one I prefer out of the 3. Let's finish it up with tight end here. Both of us last year, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid. So that worked out swimmingly. And I actually also went 2 for 3. I named Higbee, which was a miss, but Jake Ferguson and Luke Musgrave, which, Musgrave, when he was in the lineup, was pretty good. But Ferguson was great. So we had some hits here at tight end last season. Let's try to keep it going. Who do you like this year?
Well, I don't know if we could top Laporta and Kincaid, but I'm going to talk about 2 guys that kind of fit that profile. I don't think they have as much upside, but the first guy is Cade Otton at tight end 20. He's ranked right about where he should go. But he's the type of tight end in this range, I think, that has tight end 1 potential this year. He has elite underlying usage in terms of playing time. He averaged a 91% route participation rate from week 4 on last year. Unfortunately, he just doesn't draw as many targets to be a tight end 1. But this is going to be his 3rd season. He's 25 years old. This is when tight ends do typically break out if they are going to be tight end 1, so could see a breakout season here. He was drafted in the 4th round, the same class as Trey McBride, who in the 2nd round. He was a similar type of prospect, so that's kind of what you could see in a year 3 breakout. And he showed flashes actually in the playoffs last year. He went off in the first game. I think he had another good game the very next round. But all he would need is just an increase in target rate because the playing time's there. And, ever since he became the starter back in week 5 of his rookie season 2 years ago, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin have played every single game. So he has yet to see any sort of baked in injury upside where one or two of those guys do miss a game. So this has pretty much been his floor. So I think tight end 20, you're not drafting him, but he's going to be on the waiver wire. And he's the type of guy that could go off or Mike Evans or Chris Godwin go down. And he's the kind of guy that you need to pick up because he could offer tight end 1 value at some point in the season. And the other guy is actually a guy you mentioned last year. I loved him heading into last year as well. It's Luke Musgrave, tight end 18. He has a ton of upside in this range. Like you said, he flashed that upside in the first half last season, but he went down, missed most of the second half due to injury. Fellow rookie Tucker Kraft filled in nicely in his place. They're probably going to be in some sort of timeshare this year. So that's why his ADP is down here near tight end 20. But he could the Packers might prefer just having, a legit number 1 tight end. So there's a chance he could see an 80% snap rate or something going forward. Or if Tucker Kraft were to miss time, he's a guy I'd be very interested in just this offense in general under Jordan Love. I'm very high on. So he's a guy that he would need certain things to line up, but he absolutely has, top 12 upside. So he's another guy, to monitor in season to potentially be like a waiver wire league winner type.
Yeah, I have them with about a 57-43 split in favor of Musgrave, and I still have him ranked as my tight end 16. So,
oh wow,
it's just another way to invest in Jordan Love, which I highly recommend heading into 2024. I got 3 guys, and these guys again I'm looking for guys that I think, and I like to call on Musgrave especially, other guys that I think could give you startable value, and it's tough. But the first guy is Taysom Hill at tight end 17. There was some worry that, with Carmichael moving on and Peyton long gone, maybe Hill was not going to be as involved under the new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, but he was getting about over a 40% route participation rate in the preseason, handling just under 40% of the carries. So he's definitely going to be involved. The only thing is it's not always going to be super consistent, but Taysom Hill has finished as a tight end 1 in the past couple of years, even with, some kind of touch and go usage. So if you kind of miss out on tight end, you could do worse than taking a guy like Taysom Hill, who's going to get snaps at running back, get snaps at the goal line, get snaps at tight end. He could throw a few passes here and there, probably get some returns as well. So he could do it all. A lot of upside with him. Another guy, Zach Ertz at tight end 31. He's going to open the year as an every down player and probably the number 2 target in that offense. Now, can he stay healthy? Who knows? But he's free. So it does in redraft leagues, it doesn't really matter. Just try it out and see how it goes. But remember, Kingsbury, he had this situation a couple years ago with a day 2 rookie in McBride behind Ertz, and Ertz was a 80% player, every down starter, in big part of the offense until he got hurt. And I think that same thing is going to happen this year with Ben Sano, who is playing, not just behind Ertz, but behind John Bates as well. So I think Ertz is, going to be out there, and he's not out there to block. So he's been in bubble wrap all preseason. I think he has a good chance to at least give you some early season value, maybe before he goes down like mid-season. He'll play his customary, 8 to 10 games and catch 5 balls in those games and on average, and then go down. But at tight end 31, can't really knock it. And the final one, Colby Parkinson, tight end 34. They gave him big money. Tyra Higbee starting the year on the PUP, and he got hurt way late. I think he got hurt in he had surgery in January or something like that. Mm-hmm. So there's a chance it's just a lost season for Higbee. And the money they gave Parkinson, there's a good chance that they envision him sliding right into that Higbee role, and that role was good for 80% route participation rate on average. And if he gets that, I mean, you're talking about a Matthew Stafford offense, a lot of games indoors. They don't throw to the running back a ton. The running back tends to be the blocker more, pass blocker more than the tight end, who's more often in the route. So Parkinson has a chance here to be, maybe even the number 3 target if, let's say, Robinson, Atwell, and Whittington kind of form some sort of committee or something like that, which could happen. So I think Parkinson is really being slept on. He's one of the few guys that you could get like a bona fide 80% snap rate from this late in the draft. So like Parkinson at TE34 as well. All right, that is going to do it for our Sweepers episode. Just to recap, quarterback, Sean had Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Sam Darnold. I had Jaden Daniels, Williams, Geno Smith, and Bryce Young. At running back, Sean went David Montgomery, Blake Corum, Bucky Irving. I like Corum as well, along with Devin Singletary, Ezekiel Elliott, and Chuba Hubbard. At wide receiver, Sean went with Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr., and Andre Yosavash. I went with Deontay Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, Cortland Sutton, Keon Coleman, and Joshua Palmer. And at tight end, Sean went Cade Otton, Luke Musgrave. I went Taysom Hill, Zach Ertz, Kobe Parkinson. That's going to do it for our 2024 Fantasy Football Sweepers episode. Our Bust episode is up next. It'll be live tomorrow right here in the Fantasy Flex feed. So be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you do not miss an episode this season. And be sure to check out FantasyLabs.com for all of our fantasy football content. Don't forget that promo code FLEX20. It gets you $20 off at FantasyLabs.com/flex. You can find Sean on X at _oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon. We're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until the Bus Pod, let's get this money.